Hey, guess what we're talking about today?
It is COVID-19. I mean, everybody's talking about it. Coronavirus, right? It's everywhere. It's in our communities. It's around the world. It's ravaging the world. We want to talk today about the way in which it's driven us all a little bit mad, right?
Crazy.
We want to talk a little bit today about how we manage that from a faith perspective.
Yes.
And how we can respond to it in a constructive way and really help others to prosper during the experience of COVID-19. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about that today. Right, are you ready for this, Jordan? Everybody's talking about COVID. We might as well talk about COVID too.
Yeah. There's a lot of people talking about COVID. We've I find it really difficult coming back out of these, in and out of these levels, don't you?
Absolutely. And wearing a mask too is a little uncomfortable, to be honest. And yet, it's something that can really help people, right? That's what they tell us.
Yeah.
It's interesting, when we had our first lockdown here in New Zealand, we were told masks didn't help. And therefore it wasn't a recommendation, but as we've gone along, more and more research has come to prove what I guess common sense would have suggested, which is that actually masks can help slow the spread, right? Slow the spread, that's the slogan. We can all slow the spread.
We got to work together as a team.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so as you mentioned, in and out of lockdown, it is challenging, right? There's
you got these toe tapping hellos. Have you had someone do that to you yet, where they say hello with
chicken wing?
Chicken wing highs?
Do I shake your hand? Do I not shake your hand?
Has that been sanitized?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know where you put that thing.
That's right. That's right. So it is a challenge, right? And it's caused a lot of consternation for people, and that's why it's probably worth us talking about it a little bit, because at the end of the day, it's here. It's probably going to be here to stay for a little while. What's the hardest thing been for you personally when it comes to this lockdown story and COVID-19?
Honestly, it's actually navigating with people, being able to look them in the eye. There's some people that still want to be able to engage with you, and that's difficult because you're wanting to care for them as well. You're wanting to still adhere to these social distancing practices. Being able to read people, to be honest, learning how to read people, because some people are overzealous, possibly. Some people are underzealous and they just want to throw all caution to the wind, and just learning how to navigate both of those extremes. I actually find that really difficult and interacting with people.
Probably for me, the hardest thing about this whole COVID thing has been the crazy. Like wearing a mask, it's this idea that, well, the governments are trying to take away our voice and make us anonymous and
to muzzle you.
To muzzle us, that's right. And it's like, well, really? I mean, would we want a surgeon operating on us not wearing a face mask? There's other contexts where obviously a face mask is common and ordinary practice, and a good one. And so, you get these conspiracy theories, if you like, right? That it's a man-made virus. It's designed for population control, or I'm not quite sure how that works though, because like governments have shut down their borders to try and prevent deaths. So I'm not quite sure how it's population control. But you get all these sorts of theories out there that make it harder for us to actually pull together and work as a team. And then within the religious fraternity, you also get the sense in which it's a statement of persecution, and so we should cooperate with it. So I guess the question is this a religious persecution thing that we should stand against? Or is this a health response that we should be endorsing? What do you think about that?
I think it's definitely a health response. In no way has been so far ever been a stand against religion. I mean, and if it is, let's think about that for a moment. Just the extremes, if this was an attack on religion, but I can't see it as being that. That if this has forced us to meet in small groups, actually, if you look throughout history, the church has always thrived. God's people have always thrived when they've been forced to meet in small groups. So actually, if you want to think of it that way, it could be the best thing that has happened to our church thus far. But if we think that the church can only be a successful model if it's worshiping in this corporate setting of in hundreds and gathering, I think there may be some flaw in our theology about worship.
Absolutely, because we are the church, right? The church is a body of believers. It's a people, isn't it? And so wherever we are, the church is. Wherever we gather, wherever we worship, church is happening. If you want to think of it in those terms, right? But I guess the thing is, there's this picture in Revelation 13 of another age of religious persecution coming. And in some ways, you could think that this looks like it could be something like that. Yeah. But I think the motivation is very different. Maybe it's more like Leviticus 13. So you got Revelation 13, which pictures this sort of a persecution against the true believers of God, and that's a future prophetic understanding. But then you get Leviticus 13, and if you read Leviticus 13, it actually gives an Old Testament health response for contagion. Yeah. And a lot of what we're doing now that governments have endorsed and instructed their people to follow and asked churches to cooperate with, and businesses and bars and social clubs and all the rest, really seems like a national response or a national rollout of what the Bible actually tells us in Leviticus 13 to stop the spread of contagion. Yeah. You know, and so I guess we have to think about that, and we'd love to hear from you, from the viewer. You know, use the comment section, give us some indication. How have you experienced the COVID-19 thing? I hope that you haven't lost anyone close to you, but the chances are some of you may have. Yeah. What has that been like for you? And how do you, if you move in religious circles, what have you found? Do you find it more of a religious persecution thing, or do you see it more as a Leviticus 13? Let's cooperate with a health response thing. And, you know, because I guess those two mindsets determine how we, within the religious circles, will respond to our governments. Yeah. You know, if you see it as a persecution thing, you're going to rise up against it, you're going to resist it, etc. If you see it as a health response thing, then actually maybe it's like 1 Corinthians 13. I don't know why all these chapters are 13, by the way. But, you know, 1 Corinthians 13 tells us what true love is. Mm-hmm. And Romans 13 tells us, again, another chapter 13, Romans 13 tells us about, you know, cooperating with governments and respecting them because God has ordained them and put them there. Yes. You know, and so you've got all these chapter 13s, Revelation 13, Leviticus 13, Romans 13, 1 Corinthians 13.
You're on a roll, keep going.
And so this is the big question that we've got to ask ourselves is how does this factor in for us? Yeah. You know? So what do you think about this idea of this thing actually being a love response?
You know, just recently I've had a conversation with someone that they've been impacted personally. There's been deaths in their family, and you know, for the first time, you know, rather than just seeing people as a number, you know, I saw a face. And hey, I think it's willing that we can respond in love to people for a greater good. You know, I might not be a vulnerable person myself, but you might have someone that's elderly, you know, that we can
I won't take that personally. That's all right.
You know, elderly or someone that may be compromised and sick, and that we could be a little bit more cautious in that way in how we approach and how we adhere to.
Yeah, I like that. So even if I'm not worried about myself, what about those in my circle or my extended circle? Yeah. Right? And I guess, you know, if I think about what's happening in the news right now, you know, you have President Donald Trump of the United States who has contracted COVID-19. He was taken off to, you know, military hospital, got given the best kind of treatment, right? Experimental treatments, all sorts of things that probably the vast majority, the average person, doesn't have access to. And then leaves early, is still considered to be contagious, is back on the campaign trail and sending out messages saying to people, don't fear the virus, you know, don't let it control you, don't let it dictate to you, it's not that bad. And I'm thinking to myself, so here you have a world leader who has access to healthcare that most people don't have access to, saying it's not that bad. Like, it doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah. You know, and as a church, as a religious organization, I think we need to be careful that we are erring on the side of showing compassion and love to people. And love has actual legs. It walks in the form of service, right? It's not just a word, it's not just a feeling. What does love look like in action in the community in a COVID-19 situation? Even if you don't personally think it's that dangerous, and I would differ from you on that, but even if you personally don't and you put it in the classification of a new kind of a flu, wouldn't you still want to care for and protect and do everything in your power to help prevent the spread of something which is going to hurt someone else, even if it doesn't hurt you?
Yeah, I think it's important to follow that thought, to being willing to put others ahead of your own self, your own agendas. And I think actually, maybe at every flu season, we should maybe practice a bit more social distancing. You know, it kind of can get a little bit under my skin when someone comes and shakes you or gives your hair a hug and then says, oh, I've been struggling with a cold this week. I'm like, Thanks. Thanks
So
for sharing.
So was that hug an act of love, or was it a curse?
And then I'm staying up with my children at night because they're sick and they're puking their guts out, right? And then I'm struggling with loving maybe that person that passed me on those germs, if I can source point X.
Yeah, that's right. We want to share the gospel, but we don't want to share our bugs, right? There's some things you share and there's some things you don't share, absolutely. And I think the history and the example we see in Scripture of what love looks like, if you look at any great person in history that's revered, they made sacrifices, personal sacrifices for the good or for the benefit of others, right? And I think that's what love is. The greatest example we find of Jesus is he actually takes our contagion upon himself, lays down his life at the cross for our redemption, right? And so I think that if we are going to preach about the God of love, claim to believe in the God of love, proclaim the gospel of love, that we should act in love, even if we disagree perhaps on the nature, the origins, the backstory to the COVID-19 coronavirus, right?
We could talk about that all day.
Yeah, absolutely. We can go backwards and forwards on that. But the question becomes, what does it look like for me to tangibly love those around me, protect the vulnerable around me, care for those around me?
Yeah. Hey, and I've found actually through these experience of in and out of lockdowns, a phone call can go a long ways. Hey, before, you just assumed you would have that encounter with someone, but actually be a bit more proactive and give the phone call because people are feeling cut off right now. You can still visit people, but you're able to still do this socially and safely. And I think maybe this, if anything, it has learned our attention to care for people and to visit. It's heightened that sense of people that are actually been cut off, even before COVID. Right.
Yeah, COVID's been hard on mental health, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it. People have struggled there. Now we're struggling economically, right? Which is a major problem.
Huge.
Which adds to the mental health problem, which adds to the social strain, which adds to family violence, which adds like there's a whole lot of dominoes that are connected here that fall together or stand together, and so there's lots of ways we can care, starting with personal protective equipment, right? PPE. Even as I say, even if my personal conviction is it's not that bad, the whole PPE thing, the phone calls, the deliberately trying to be in contact with people, looking out for others. I love how Philippians chapter 2 has this verse there. It says, don't look out only for your own interests, but look out for the interests of others. And I think that is fundamentally giving the concept of love legs to walk into the community.
That's right.
Don't only look out for my own interests, but look out for the interests of others as well.
Wow. Mic drop.
So I guess as we near the end of this conversation, we do want to hear from you. We would love for you to use those comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't, as we're going to have these real conversations about faith and life and how they intersect with each other. So do subscribe, do share this video with someone, post it on your social media, and engage with us in those comment sections. So on behalf of Jordan and myself, Adrian, and the Whangarei Seventh-day Adventist Church, thank you for tuning in, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you on the couch very soon.
See you soon.